This is Adrian Bocaneanu, your host at The Starting Point. Week after week, I have the privilege to conduct extended conversations with personalities from different parts of the world and from different ways of life. Many times we discuss in depth the earliest memories of life, religion, school, events and encounters, the way this contributed to their becoming the persons that they are, hence the name of the program, The Starting Point. It is my hope and my prayer that tonight's conversation will encourage you to explore, to better understand your starting point, and to ask God to indicate your destination in glory and to guide you on the surest road between the two. Dear Pastor John, I'm so happy to have you again in my program. You remember, of course, I interviewed you for Hope Channel Romania very soon after your arrival in our church. That was almost 3 years and a half ago. And now, in a few more weeks, you are going to leave to continue your studies. And I think it would be very nice to have you again. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be with you these past 3.5 years.
Very kind of you. Thank you. So, looking into retrospect, how do you appreciate these 3 years and a half? In what ways they have provided you a space or time for personal and ministerial growth and knowing God better, knowing your Bible better? How would you look back to this time?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's been a 3.5 years of growth for sure. And I often reflect back, especially now that I'm about to go off to seminary and leave Atlanta North Church. I often reflect on how God has led me. And it's been quite the journey, not only professionally with my job, but also just personally. I mean, everybody, whether you're a pastor or not, watching, you can recognize the growth that happens once you leave college and you begin your first job and taking on adulthood pressure and responsibilities, having to make plans like what apartment you're going to live in, what part of town, uh, things like this. I have seen myself grow. I used to be a little bit more anxious than I am now.
Mhm.
And I think of the verse, be anxious about nothing, and you bring it to God in prayer. And this has been my experience. I think we'll get to this later in the program, talking about my prayer practices,
Mhm.
my prayer journaling, just being able to reflect with God, to look on where I am going, where I have been. Uh, it does something. And I have seen that as I continue to pursue growth, as I continue to pursue, I gave the example of, anxiety. Lord, give me calm as I'm moving into a new location or in the workplace. Lord, give me wisdom. I'm pursuing the right course of action to take. Lord, not only for me, but now let me pray for the church leaders, for the elders. Elder Adrian, you're an elder at my church. And so I pray for you and the rest of the elders that we might be a team and that we might grow. And so I have seen myself grow in leadership, in team building, in team working. And it has been quite the journey with God. And I'm appreciative for this one idea, which is blooming where you're planted. My wife, she she's taught me a lot. I respect her. She is quite wise. And she's the one who gave me this phrase. Uh, she herself used it in her life. She received it in her early years in like high school and into college. But I mean, the idea is quite plain: bloom where you're planted. No matter where you are in life, aim to grow, aim to bloom. If you're in a good area in life and things are going well, still grow. Don't just remain complicit. And if you're in a tough situation, there is still room to grow, and even if things aren't going your way. And in pastoral ministry, of course, there are challenges as we are trying to win souls and trying to reach the community. And we push, we grow, and we enjoy the process. I think that is one thing I have learned quite a lot in the past 3.5 years. No matter where I am, enjoy the process, enjoy the growing. Whether it's up, whether it's down, I can still look up.
Are there some more specific situations you remember? Situations which you think they will remain for a long time, forever with you from your time here?
Absolutely. I could share countless stories
Mhm.
of meeting with church members, especially those who themselves were going through rough areas of life, whether they lost a family member or they have problems with their jobs or they are worried with the states of other family members, often in certain parts of the country. But it wouldn't be right, of course, to share these stories. But I do want to mention that the memories that stick with someone the most are going to be those memories that you share in someone else's most intimate parts in life and when you can come alongside them. So I keep these memories very close to me because these are moments where people share, thank you so much for being here. And everybody can experience those words being uttered to them. You don't have to be a pastor. All it takes is, oh, you hear a coworker they're going through something rough. And instead of saying, I don't want to dip into their emotional situation and be dragged down myself,
Mhm.
stepping into that. And so those memories, like I said, those are close to me. But some bigger ones, of course, that are more visible to the public eye, all the different ministry projects that the church has done that I have helped lead and work with the church leadership team. Um, Most recently, and then working back, I've been enjoying the building the family project, the theme that we've been having here at the church, and not only focusing the sermons in that regard, but of course also looking at our ministries and trying to focus the ministries of the church into this theme. Um, and unity just prospers here, and I appreciate that. Another big event that will stick with me long past my time here at Land North Church is a big event that we had. Mark Finley, Elder Mark Finley, he came to visit our church back in September. And this was a whole Atlanta-wide initiative for all the churches, the Adventist churches in Atlanta, to come to our church. And um, you can imagine how many Adventists are going to come in the Atlanta area to hear Mark Finley speak. So we were planning for hundreds upon hundreds of people coming to our church, and we have to make lots of preparations. Um, Food for the potluck, decorations, also the order of service, working with other churches and planning their musical pieces and collaboration with how they're going to fit into the service. Many, many things. Many meetings that happened here at Land North Church with our leaders. Many spreadsheets were made, looking over things, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. But at the end of it all, what I'm taking with me is if we set our mind to something as a church, we can reach it. Planning big events like this at my church, but even at the conference or at the NED level or the union levels, they plan big initiatives all the time, and it's possible. So this has taught me that if you set your mind on something and you plan for it and you work with other people and you use their talents, I don't have all the talent. I was not the reason that Mark Finley's visit was a success at our church, his weekend visit, but it was a team effort. And so that teamwork, that sticks with me, and that we can do things and we can accomplish God's work if we put our minds to it. Whether that means hosting an Adventist and kind of Adventist speaker like Mark Finley and building the Adventist community, kind of building up the workers, the task force, or if that also is big events going out into the community and trying to win souls. I think back early to my ministry, Pastor Edgar, my senior, who was here. He has since moved to the conference position. He also kind of helped lead a big initiative, Atlanta Family Fun Fest or something it was called. It was in a park in Atlanta, and there were games and festivities. It was geared toward the general public to try and bring people into communication with Adventism. And we had some leads, some Bible study leads from that. And it was a good experience, but lots of planning, lots of work, but it is possible as long as you work as a team.
I suppose from time to time you think on your next church where you are going to serve. and maybe you think, oh, I should do this or do that, or be this way or that way. Uh, it happens to you. Would you like to share some of some of your premonitions or anticipations of your future ministry?
Yeah, thank you so much. And my case has been interesting because I, as a pastor, I'm an associate here at this church. A lot of young people will become a senior pastor of a church, but in Georgia Cumberland, they like to give some training underneath a mentor pastor, which I appreciate. So, as was already alluded to, my senior mentor pastor, Edgar Alquinta, he had since left. At the time of recording this, it's April. He left in the end of April last year. So it's
Yeah,
been a year
okay.
now that I've kind of been in this interim state as an associate, but kind of working as a senior pastor.
Yes.
So I've been able to kind of put forward some of these projects in mind, like gearing the sermon calendar to match the vision of the church. I
Mhm.
think this is very powerful. So that idea of building the family, this is what we're working for. How can you build the family in the immediate family, husband and wife, and children? How can you build then the church family? Then we're called to build the family of God by adding more family members into that, going out into the world and practicing the Great Commission. And thinking, working with leaders about how this can be accomplished, it's very important. And so I would want to do this when I go to my next district as well, is to pour into the leaders to find what talents they have,
Mhm.
and then to come together and put on a vision, cast a vision, cast a mission that our church wants to do and lead towards that.
Yeah, I think you consider that you had the opportunity to begin your ministry in a church with incredible talent, incredible capabilities.
Yes.
I don't think too many churches around have the same pool of resources, and maybe in the future churches it will be. Here in our church it was an issue how to give work to so many capable people. In other places you'll have to struggle how to find people to do the tasks they need to do.
I've been very, very blessed at Land North Church. This is very capable church,
Yeah.
many, many leaders and seasoned leaders as well, people like yourself who have been in ministry before, or anyways, many more. Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Mm, we'll touch a few topics to reflect your personal and professional growth during this time. You've mentioned already your prayer life, and you have used this phrase, prayer journaling. I think. Some of our viewers are a little more familiar with Bible journaling, but prayer journaling, would you like to explain that and share with us your own experience? When did you heard that? When did you decide to start? How do you do that? What was what were the benefits, if I could say, not material benefits, of course, but spiritual. So share with us about your experience of prayer journaling.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Um, the mind, starting off a little bit more abstract and then coming into my own personal experience, the human mind is an interesting thing at uh, how people process. Some people are verbal processors. They process their thoughts by talking, or some people by thinking by themselves and just typing. Other people like to process in their mind and just think about things. For me, I'm definitely a verbal processor. I like to audibly hear what I'm saying as I'm speaking it. And that just helps me to think through things. Otherwise, my mind can become an echo chamber
Mm.
and it's harder to process succinctly inside of my own quiet space in my mind, just thinking thoughts to myself. And so, as a young person, middle school, high school age, when I was at home, I enjoyed walking around my room and kind of praying to God in that way.
Mhm.
It was helpful for me, especially when it's coming to nighttime and one is sleepy. And as a high schooler, I might doze off if I'm trying to pray, or it might be a short prayer. But as Christians, we all know we need to pray. We want to pray. And so if I want to pray, that must mean I want to pray well. I'm not going to be satisfied with mediocre praying. And I would walk. And that would help me to stay awake, but to also process. And then coming to college, I started out having a roommate, and it's kind of awkward. I can't do that same practice and with the roommate. So what I did on the top bunk there in my college dormitory room, I would take out my phone. And I remember my first prayer journal was actually about prayer journaling. I was texting, journaling to God, and just talking to him like a friend, asking him, is this a good method to use? Would this work out for my prayer life? And I remember texting like, okay, my roommate is down there. He's needing to go to bed. Could I try to find a quiet place in the dormitory? But no, that might be weird because someone could come into I don't know, the study room there or lounge area in the dormitory and I need a private place. And so that began my long journey of prayer journaling. And it has kind of gone through different iterations. And at some points it's been stronger, at some points it's been weaker. If I look back on my journal and all I do is I use the notes app on my phone, you'll see some gaps, of course. Spiritual growth is a journey of ups and downs. And I wish I could say I journaled every day, but I didn't. Uh, Fast forward years, I leave school, undergraduate, and now I'm a pastor. And I have my prayer lists, of course. That is also something I would go through to check mark them. I had used Logos Bible software, and you can make it where you check it off and, okay, you did it for today, the different prayer requests. But with prayer journaling, I started to journal now with writing my hand. And then sometimes I would try to use my laptop, and I find that it's just easier to get my thoughts out. They're more succinct when I can type them out. But with typing, it's when my thoughts are moving faster. And writing, it's slower. So it actually forces me to think more deeply about what I'm saying. So those are some things as to why I do it. But as of now, I use my iPad, and I just have a pencil. Electronically, I write the notes, and I enjoy that because then you can easily search and type in, oh, I remember I prayed something a little bit ago, and you want to find it. I know Leonardo da Vinci, a lot of great people in history have journaled. Journaling is a great way to process your thoughts. Leonardo da Vinci, he wasn't journaling for prayer, but he was journaling for his great ideas. And he would, at the top of his written journal, write 1, 2, 3, 4, all the different page numbers so he can kind of remember, oh, I had a thought that day and it was on page 77 or somewhere, 77 to 80. So prayer journaling is also helpful to go back and to see how God has led you, to see the thoughts that he has given you. If you have a thought, then you can go back to it and massage it some more, think about it, contemplate it, journal about it again with God, and go deeper into it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you allowed yourself to experiment a little bit, to try this, to try that. That's helpful because I think in the mind of many people, prayer is just one size fits all, or one way. And if we don't do it exactly that way, hands folded, closed eyes, probably kneeling down, we feel like we didn't do it in the right way. And probably for some people that works well, but not necessarily for everyone. So rather than living with a dissatisfaction that something is not right, or I don't feel I grow as I should. Let's try experiment different ways. You already said that you did it for a while walking, and that's quite unusual, but probably not unique. Uh, Actually, I do it as well. I never tell anyone else. And now all of a sudden, I feel encouraged by you and say it so publicly. and you tried handwriting on your phone or on your iPad in different ways. Uh, yeah, how do you manage to keep all of these different mediums together? So or that doesn't matter that much. I mean, how you mentioned already that once in a while you search back. How important is that to explore or to dig in the past, or it's mainly something to help you at the present time?
Both. I mean, journaling is so powerful for praying because we remember the things that we write down and we
Mhm,
forget the things that we try to remember in our mind.
mhm,
And it's also great to be able to track your growth with God. I
mhm,
can now look back in my journal to the first journal entries that I made coming here to Atlanta and
mhm,
pastoring. I can see my early struggles. And
mhm,
then the gratitude that comes in your heart as you read, oh yeah, I used to struggle with that. Or man, God answered my prayer here in a powerful way. Um, it's powerful. And so I like what you said about it's not a one size fits all with prayer.
mhm,
There are many different tools. There are many different ways. Uh, Praying is not like talking to someone face to face. I mean, we know this. That's why people fold their hands and they close their eyes. They want to show respect to God.
mhm,
Talking to God is different, but at the same time, it's similar
mhm,
because God is a person and He does hear you and He speaks to us. Um, and so, really, a lot of great Christians have practiced this model, soliloquies, that idea of journaling and kind of dialoguing with yourself, or I view it as, well, let me put it this way. A soliloquy is a dialogue with yourself. And often in my prayer journal, I dialogue with myself
mhm,
because I don't want to put words in God's mouth. I'll go to the Bible to figure that out,
mhm,
but I'll often argue with myself in God's presence.
mhm,
And it might go something like, I'm talking about, let's just pick a very simple and immature example of, I don't know what shirt to wear this morning, God. And I address it to him, but then I might argue with myself and allow God's Spirit to kind of process my thoughts with me. And I might then, hyphenate it to show that this is now my response, my interlocutor for my dialogue. And I might say, well, red might be a good color and dot, 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 dot. But then I'll always turn it back to God and Lord, here's what I'm thinking. Where should I go? And Lord, I'm thinking that red is a good color to wear today, and so forth. So dialoguing with myself, but then always turning those dialogues to God and addressing Him. Uh, Many different methods. I mean, that's one, but maybe someone wants to only write to God. I know one person, they would write a journal where they would do it kind of a prayer Bible journal, and they would have the Bible verse, and then they would say, God says to me, and then they would write out what God is saying to them through that Bible text. And then they would have a second section where it said, now I'm responding to God.
mhm,
So prayer, of course, is always a response to God, but how you do it, what method you use, this is the fun part of being a Christian. Experiment. You have these boundary markers and just stay within that lane and you will have it. I want to, though, address one thing. Maybe someone's thinking, but it might not be respectful. And
mhm,
I often have thought this. And I
mhm,
have come to the place now that I don't think it's disrespectful to journal to God or to kind of dialogue with myself to God or just address God. I do that too, of course, without an interlocutor. I use different methods. There are times when you're praying where you need to process things with God. There are times when you're praying when you need to process things with God on your knees because it's really weighing on you.
mhm,
There are times when you're in awe about the grandeur of God. And of course, at those times I kneel and I submit myself in my bodily posture to fit the posture of my heart.
mhm.
It depends on the type of dialogue you're having with God.
Yeah, yeah. For some people, the main burden or the main need of prayer is felt in connection with actual situations in their lives. So they demand God to do something about this issue or that issue. And sometimes they feel like God responded and solved that issue. Uh, Many times it looks like he didn't. Uh, do you have a word on that? Do you have your own experience on that? Should prayer for solving some pressing issues overwhelm all other topics of prayer, or we should keep it to a lesser place and focus more on the relationship, on the growth and things like that. What is your thinking on that?
Absolutely. And this has been it's something that I've mentioned to the church. I think I mentioned this on some board meeting. I don't know if you were there. I think, of course, when we talk to our parents, we have questions and concerns. But if all we talk to our parents about is, I need this, I need that, that's a very terrible conversation. That's not a conversation, it's just a request. So if you have prayer requests, I have a prayer request list where all it is basically just requests, or I also have actually my goals, my own personal goals. Lord, I want to speak positively more, not just negatively. I want my thoughts to naturally think on the positive, not the negative. And I just write that statement. But it's a request, and so it's very natural to have requests. But if
Mhm.
that's all your conversation is, it won't go anywhere. If when I'm journaling and I just journal, Lord, I need help finding an apartment as I move to seminary this summer. That's what I'm journaling about. But I don't stop there. It's not just one question. Rather, Lord, let me talk to you now about the situation I'm in, and I give him all the details. Of course, he knows all the details, but it's the mental processing that helps. If you don't get it out, I mentioned I'm a verbal processor. It helps also type it out. That's kind of a way to process it. Um, that is a conversation, not just a request. And I find that we as humans, we have one path forward. God has many.
Mhm.
And God doesn't have, oh, path A is the best, and you need to pick that. Otherwise, path B is a lesser sort. And this is wrong when we come to God in prayer. We often, sometimes, people can think that way. And so that's why they make the request, Lord, I need this to happen. Otherwise, oh, everything's going to fall apart. I was praying recently to God in my journal that I'm having some issues with my apartment. I need to extend my lease a few months because my lease ends before I leave to seminary.
Mhm.
And I was afraid that the apartment wasn't going to let me extend it. And fast forward, they didn't. But I was asking God, Lord, this would help it be more simple, and I wouldn't need to find more financial support and so forth. At the end of the day, God solved it for me, but not the way I was expecting. And I
Mhm.
was journaling about that. Lord, I know you will solve this for me, even if it's not the way that I'm asking.
Mhm.
And as you dig deep into that, your mind not only is stuck on a request, but now you have gratitude. Now your whole being is opened up to the all-seeing God, and you actually have a personal connection where you're in awe of Him. And that's how you make requests deeper, is talk about them, but then recognize God will solve it no matter how you might think is best.
Thank you so much for sharing these quite personal aspects of your work with the Lord, and I'm convinced that there will be an encouragement to many of our viewers. It's difficult not to have some dissatisfaction with our prayer life, but you have opened new avenues, and I think you gave us a lot of hope. We can grow in different ways, and we have open ways for us to experience more satisfaction and a closer relation with the Lord. I happen to know that during your stay here with us, you have also been in training for a couple of months in a hospital chaplaincy. May we discuss that experience a little bit?
Yes, please. Uh,
So, what determined you to explore that, and then how give us some practical details about it, how long it was, how it was structured, what was the content, how much classroom training, how much practical activity in the hospital, supervision and things like that. So, how did it start?
Yeah, this was an interesting journey, and I can look back on my journals and see the process of how God has led me. as most good things can start, you hear about the idea from someone you respect, someone you look up to. I'd actually journaled about this recently, just kind of reflecting again on my time here and how God has blessed and the different things that have popped into my pathway in
Mhm.
the past 3.5 years, and this was one of them. Well, how did this come about? Well, I've had encouragement from people like yourself. I remember talking to you about chaplaincy. I know you have taken a CPE or clinical pastoral education unit. I also have spoken with another pastor of the Marietta Church, Joseph Womack, or my ministerial regional director, Elder Neil Reed. And
Mhm.
these men have also taken these CPE units, and they have found it wonderful for their ministry, but also wonderful for just learning how to be a good Christian.
Mhm.
There's so many values in chaplaincy that aid to this, and I'm sure we can get to this in a little bit. But some more of the practical side of things, I applied for it here at Emory, and praise God, I was able to get in. I enjoyed the interview process, and it started in June, early June, ended in middle of August,
Mhm.
uh, and it was quite long. A long internship. I'm an associate pastor here, so I worked with my conference and they were willing. They're like, yes, this will help grow you as a pastor. But this was decided and I was accepted before I knew that my senior pastor would be leaving. So it was quite interesting that I had quite a bit of burden to juggle
Mhm.
at the church because the time requirements, it was basically a 40-hour work week
Mhm.
internship. I didn't get paid at Emory. And on Wednesday, we had education where they would teach us. And then on Monday and the rest of the weekdays, we were just there in the hospital. I was at a cancer ward.
Mhm.
So I was visiting with outpatient cancer people coming in for their treatment, for their infusions in the infusion bay. And it was quite an experience working with these people who are so close to death, trying to empathize with them, to encourage them, to listen to them. It did a lot for me. It taught me a lot, and I am very grateful for it. It has impacted how I view ministry. It's impacted also giving me a new frame, or maybe not frame, that might be too big of an idea, but different perspectives also on reading the Bible
Mhm.
and human interaction, what humans need when they're going through the most difficult experience in life, suffering and facing death.
Yeah. So, explain also a little bit the process. How do you work in a team? And I think from time to time you come together and you share experiences. Uh, you provide encouragement and critique to each other. Have you been through that?
I have been through that. So my cohort was I was the only Adventist pastor.
Hmm.
And I went through it with two Baptist ministers and a Catholic priest.
Hmm.
And we enjoyed bonding on this one idea of we're all Christians. Yes, we're different denominations, we believe differently, but we care about people who are dying and we want to help them. And so you, in the classroom setting, this was some of our favorite times. I remember my friends and I call them my friends, they are my friends. We would say that some of our favorite parts were coming together and just discussing how things went. Oh, you have a case study here about how your interaction went. Now, how did it go? And you had to chart it out and give a verbatim, as they called it.
Yes.
And then we would discuss it and encourage each other and critique each other. And so, teamwork, this is very important. You have to be willing to accept someone else's perspective,
Hmm.
even from other people who are not the educator. We had, of course, our educator there. He was teaching us, very seasoned chaplain himself, but we took feedback from each other as we were all learning together. So that was powerful.
Yeah. So, working in a cancer ward where people would come day after day to take infusions. That means you were able to meet quite a number of times with the same patients. Is that right?
Um, that was one of the things at my specific location that we wish we would have had more of. We actually didn't see the same patient too often. I'd
Mhm.
probably say saw, I could count on my hand
Mhm.
if I had a repeat patient.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they were new faces, new experiences, having to step into a new world of someone and try to understand what they're going
Mhm.
through.
Mhm. How did you find that experience of seeing new faces again and again, entering in the life of a person, sometimes quite deeply troubled situation, and then not being able to see that person again, quite the opposite with the church, where for the time you serve as a pastor in a church, you meet the same persons, you may meet a person with a difficult situation many times, uh, and yeah, how would you compare the two areas or styles of work?
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't know about your perspective for a follow-up. And
Yes.
so really you want to be fully present with this person
Mhm.
already as a chaplain, but even more so now working in the cancer ward because there are just so many people coming through. Um, it's sometimes sad that you don't get to follow up with them and you want to. I remember positive cases where I was talking with one individual and they said, "Man, I had cancer for the past 5 years, and Chaplain John, you just asked me a question about what's something that brings me joy in life." And, taking a step back, let's digress a little bit here. Of course, we understand that God has given us these joys, these passions in life, whether you're a Christian or not. This fellow happened to not be a Christian.
Mhm.
Helping people understand what brings them satisfaction in life because God has given us spiritual gifts. We all have a talent or something we really enjoy. And once you do that, you find purpose, you find meaning in life. Um, Often that's what people need in order to have purpose. And so this is one of the questions that they taught us to ask, to dive into these people's lives. What passion do they have? And for him, for this individual, it was writing a book. He was writing a book, and for 5 years, or 3 years, whatever I mentioned, I don't remember the exact date. I'm just giving a placeholder here. He had stopped writing because he's depressed, he's sad, and he's dying, um, and he missed it. And he's at the tail end of his therapy, whatever it was. Let's just say it was, anyways. And he was saying, "You know what, Chaplain, I'm glad you're bringing this up. I think I'm going to get back into that. I think I'm going to start writing my book again and finish." And just the brightness that came upon him, he has something to look forward to. He has something to work for in life, something that brings him joy. So those positive experiences, I wish I could follow up with him. I wish I could hear, how did your book go? How far along are you? Um, there are negative cases where I heard of a family, their daughters were at summer camp. They had heard an idea that their father had cancer. They didn't know what it meant. And his was a very aggressive cancer. He probably wasn't going to make it to their high school graduation. I, this was a tough interaction for me. I use this as one of my verbatims in class to kind of dissect this and figure out how I can better support them and just talk about it with my peers. Uh, I wish I could go back and ask them, how's it going right now? It's not going well, I'm sure. But I want to hear about your life. I want to hear how your daughters are doing because they were very passionate and depressed about how their daughters would take it. And I want them to process that with me. So, chaplaincy, this follow-up idea, it reminds me of prayer. God is always coming back and wanting to hear about us, how we are doing. And oftentimes we kind of just pray about the good things when things are going well and the bad things when bad are going bad. But God is interested in that follow-up. And so that's my job as a chaplain, as a pastor, especially chaplaincy has enriched my pastoring experience and my pastoral calling in that I want to check up with people. It's been months since that one church member has announced that they have some sickness or a family member's passed away. Let me follow up with them months down the line when everyone has stopped thinking about it. Oh, but should you really start doing that? You might get them crying again. That's okay, because that is really what touches people. And you would want that, and I say you in general, to the viewers as well. You would want that if someone checked in with you. Um, so this is what we do as Christians,
Yeah.
following the example that God has given us of how he interacts with us.
Yeah, as pastors, we may sometimes become tired of being busy with the same issues, but also we can realize after this experience of chaplaincy that it's so much better in this respect. Let's move on. Uh, I enjoy very much your preaching, and you also enjoy preaching. And so, for the first time in your life, you can look behind and see, a block of almost 4 years of uh, quite preaching quite often, not every Sabbath, but maybe twice a month for such a long time. Uh, and that in connection with your personal spiritual growth, what do you think are your achievements, or in what ways uh, your understanding of the Bible has developed, and in what ways preaching helped you to do that, in what ways it helps your preaching?
Yeah. Now, preaching is such a blessing because it forces you to look deeply in the text.
Mhm.
And you have a deadline. I mean, we all enjoy reading the Bible. We all enjoy studying it. If you come home, let's just say you have a random job, you're an engineer, and you come home at 5 p.m. Uh, you might enjoy studying the Bible, or you might enjoy just kicking your feet back and saying, "Let me have my dinner and relax this evening." With pastoring, it's no different. People think pastors all they do is write a sermon. Um, it's not true. We have other tasks that we have to do. So even in pastoring, I want to encourage people by giving this authentic view that we're not different than other people just because we're spiritual ministers and this is our job. We have to set time aside for it. And so this is something I've recognized in my own experience. I have to set that appointment of pastoral sermon writing so that my pastoral administrative doesn't try and encroach. And sermon writing, it's been a process. I've had different ways, different methods of trying to deliver the sermons or write the sermons. I don't know if I can go in depth into those, but right now I'm enjoying especially writing manuscripts because, again, for me, I find my thoughts are much more clear and I can go back over it and edit and try to make something fit here or there. The craft of sermon writing is the craft of storytelling. You're trying to figure out, okay, at what point do you give the punchline? How do you save the punchline? And with the Bible, it's so tricky because so many things are connected. And how do you build up to it without giving away some other concept? Um, but I would encourage whether someone is a pastor or not, whether they preach. And look, I'm being a pastor right now. I'm being pastoral. I want to encourage the viewers to try to write sermons, try to write studies.
Mhm.
That will just enrich your sermon prep because often you might have an idea of a text. Oh, this text is talking about such and such X. But if you actually come into having to present that, you'll quickly find, ooh, that might not actually fit perfectly. It might not be the total sum of it, or it might actually be going in the wrong direction than what the context of the verse is saying. It's easy to have a spiritual insight. It's a lot harder to turn that into a spiritual message. And that refines it. The spiritual message, the spiritual sermon writing process refines it much more deeply, and it helps you understand the text a lot more. Oftentimes, my sermon, if it's 8 to 9 pages long, I'll have at least, well, maybe not at least, but an average of like 20 to 25 pages written up. A lot of what you write doesn't go into the sermon. You have so much more notes and study, and yeah.
You have also experienced the different perspectives on interpreting the Bible. You continued to study, you continued to read, and that, of course, expanded your world of understanding. Do you like to share with us some of your personal growth in this respect?
Yeah, I like what Dwight Nelson said, the famous preacher in Adventism. I like his sermons a lot.
Yes.
He said, if you want to be a good preacher, I think he was talking to pastors at this point. If you want to be a good preacher, you need to follow three rules. And he might have put it like this, he might have not, but the idea is his. Read, read, read. You
Mhm.
have to read a lot in order to be a good speaker, or in the case of non-ministerial Christians, just for your own edification. So for me, let me talk about me. Uh, I read a lot. I have to read a lot. Of course, I read a lot of commentaries, but commentaries are often, depending on how they're written, going to be technical. They're
Mhm.
going to be things that are just going to look at the culture behind the text. They're going to look at the world behind the text. Um, some commentaries are going to focus more on looking at the world in front of the text, our own world, application. How do you look at it in the contemporary framework? So having the different type of commentaries is helpful, but especially those books on theological studies or theology, the ones that have a concept and then build it through. Um, one of the books there over I read was Leon Morris's The Atonement. And of course, that goes through this idea of the atonement, but it's pulling from different places in the Bible and helps stitch together the story. And so, for sermon writing, for good Christian learning through Bible study, one needs to make sure that they have the overarching story of the Bible. And then you can kind of look at different things like the culture, the historical culture. You can look at the grammar of the text. Um, and different things to try and figure out what's going on. But yes, if one isn't reading, they're not going to see the bigger picture. Reading just helps build the mosaic. And so when you come to the Bible yourself, it's easier to pick out pieces and understand themes that are happening. And I can mention something like this as Christians, we aren't told to come together. We're told to not forsake the assembling of the brothers and the sisters.
Mhm.
I think this is not just an idea of coming to church, but this is the idea of edifying each other. And it's such a blessing that I can be edified by someone who lived 1,000 years ago, or I can be edified by Martin Luther, who lived, some odd 500 years ago, and read his writings and pour deep into it. And he's not alive to tell me that verbally, but through the books, you can have that edification from the broader Christian giants of our faith that have gone before, and God has used them to do mighty things with his word and interpretation.
You have already alluded to two worlds of surrounding the Bible, the world of the Bible and the world in front of the Bible. Would you expand a little more on that? Some time ago, you had a very powerful sermon on the importance of the context. Would you say a few words on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, when we read the Bible, we need to make sure that we're coming to it as God's word, of course. But what that means is different for people. And we need to make sure that we're coming to understand God's ideas. And the first thing, I've learned this at different times in my life. I read a book at the beginning of my time here called Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes.
Mhm.
I would recommend that book. That was a good book. And it's exactly what the title says. We might have an idea of what the text says, and I might think very convincingly to myself, oh, this is what God is saying through the text. But this is my own bias. I have bias. Well, sometimes it might be. I'm not saying all the time. We need to be careful if it is. And that means researching and trying to figure out, trying to question, is what I believe correct? I love what Ellen White said, the truth that we stand on, it is very ready to stand up to investigation and
Mhm.
pouring into and studying, and that's how we grow. If we just take it, oh, I learned this when I was a kid. Do you really know it? But back to the text. So, uh, the context of the Bible, I think overarchingly, the Bible is about Jesus,
Mhm.
and we need to have that front and center. I love going back to Ellen White. She helps guide us with the Conflict of the Ages series. Begins with God is love, ends with God is love. This is the idea. God is love. He's trying to dwell with us. He's trying to be with us and to tabernacle with us. And how does God do that? Well, he pours out his love, and Jesus very uh, truthfully, he is the truth, exemplifies this love. And so once you understand that story, then you can pull into certain parts of the Bible, like, I don't know, the stories of David or the Proverbs, or even what Paul is writing in his epistles. And how is this all connecting to Jesus? Hebrews does this very well, where it looks into the Old Testament and says, this is how Jesus is coming about through all the Old Testament prophecies and so forth. But then this idea of context, you can look at the context of the immediate author. So if John is writing his gospel, he's writing it quite late in the first century, uh, toward past the second half. And what's he dealing with? Is he combating a certain heresy that's floating around? Some people think he's fighting some proto-Gnosticism, which in very simple terms is just these ideas that there's some secret knowledge, and there's this fight between the physical world and the spiritual world, and the spiritual is better. Well, we know this isn't true. God created us physical and spiritual beings, and both are part of us. So what I would recommend, summing it all up, and I'm realizing I'm touching many different broad points. The idea is, when we read the Bible, let's not take one verse out and just say, okay, I have my one verse. But let's see the context, the narrative context, the authorial context, how the author was wanting it to be read. We need to understand the grammatical context. We need to understand all these different type of things of the narrative flow, because story is the way that we understand things. It's how we view the world. If I have the narrative in my mind, I'm a pastor, and I go to church on Saturday, I'm a Christian, I'm going to act according to that story. But if I tell my mind, no, I'm too dumb to be a pastor, I'm not good enough to be a Christian, and that's the narrative in my mind, I'm going to act like it. So the Bible is so powerful because it's a story that brings us in, rather than us trying to just apply the Bible to us and to our story. Too often we approach the Bible where, let me pull an application into my life. When we read the Bible, we need to let the Bible pull us into its life, because the Bible is the Word, that Jesus is the Word. This is his story, his life, his teaching. Of course, the Spirit brings these words into our heart. And so when we read the Psalms, for example, oftentimes, and this is okay to do, definitely, if I'm feeling sad, I'm going to try and find a sad psalm to kind of encourage me. David often writes, oh, these people are attacking me and I feel downcast. And you might, to the audience, the general audience, you might feel, at work, my boss is just breathing down my neck. And so reading a psalm where David is lamenting might cheer your spirits a little bit, because you have someone who can sympathize and empathize with you. And that does a lot. You can feel encouraged and still sad at the same time. But this is us trying to take the Bible into our world, which is okay. That's okay. But we should also primarily read the Bible where, let's say I'm happy. I have nothing wrong going in my life. But then I read David talking about, oh, these people are attacking me and my enemies are surrounding me. If you're reading a Bible plan, I'm reading a Bible plan. I'm in Proverbs right now. I like to read the Bible once a year to get the story in. And of course, then you do in-depth study throughout the year as well. But you can have different styles of Bible reading as well. You need to have both or more. They're 3, 4, whatever. You might be reading the Psalms and think this part of David's story is really boring. I'm not going through that. I can't empathize with it, so I don't know how to apply it to my life. This isn't good. If the psalm is sad, we should also become sad. We should also step into its world, into its story narrative, whether that's the story of David or the larger story of the Bible. How are you seeing Jesus through this text, and what also he went through? And that is helpful because it is like a refresher for our mind to come back into the world that has the God of the universe trying to save us. And so Yeah, it's powerful to enter the story of the Bible. Um, I'm trying to think what if someone might understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say you need to become depressed if the Bible is talking or if Jeremiah is lamenting and so forth, but understand why Jeremiah is doing it and feel sorry with him. Jeremiah was sad because his people were forsaking God. Oh, well, if you feel fine, you think, oh, my church is actually doing quite well. We're winning souls and we have an evangelistic series coming up. Why should I feel sad? Well, don't feel sad, but feel the burden for souls that Jeremiah had and for people.
Yeah, and probably unseen by us, most of those realities are still around us,
Yes,
or
exactly.
under the corner. I mean, yeah, beyond the corner. You don't know. You feel you are good this moment, but you have no idea what's going to happen. So indeed, immersing ourselves in the stories and in the spirit of the Bible is so important. Thank you so much for sharing these aspects of your experience with our church for this period of time, and I can only imagine how eager, how curious you are to return to the class in a few months from now. I know from experience that being as you have been in the undergraduate for 4 years in school, at one point you feel overfed and you say, "Do I really need this or that? It's too much intellectual food for that period." And then when you go and start working, oh, I think they taught us this, but I don't really remember how I wish I. And now, your hunger, intellectual hunger, is back, and you are happy to return to school, and you say, "Now I know what I need to learn." Yeah. So I wish you a wonderful experience for the next 2 or 3 years. And I love to meet you again after that. Thank you again for not only for these two interviews 3 years before and now, but for your faithful and passionate ministry in our church and in your personal relationship with me. May God continue to bless, to help you grow and be fruitful in His church. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. I am always honored to interview such remarkable persons and to have your attention. Now, each one of us are at a new starting point in our personal walk with the Lord, in our families, neighborhoods, churches, and communities. May God give us wisdom and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Now to Him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you faultless before the presence of His glory with exceeding joy, to God our Savior, who alone is wise, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forever. Amen.